Hello, Gandy Tigers. Mrs. Hales back for day 2 of our Square One Art fundraiser project. So today we're going to be cutting out our flower heads, and we're going to be putting black designs on them to indicate what kind of flower it is and where the petals are. These flowers are not super realistic. They're a little bit abstracted, so don't feel like you have to have the perfect rose or the perfect daisy. I don't want you to feel like that. We're also going to be gluing down some stems on our paper, and you're going to be signing your artwork. My inspiration to create this project came from an American artist named Helen Frankenthaler. She was an abstract artist who was born in 1928 and died in 2011. So she was making art like from the 60s through the 90s primarily. And she invented a technique called canvas staining. So she would put the drippy wet paint on her canvas that was laid flat on the floor and just kind of let it pool and puddle in certain areas and take on its own life and its own shape. The first thing I did was cut out my circles, and I cut out around my circles, and I left a little bit of white paper showing around my circles. Now, I couldn't do that for all of my flowers because if you remember, like right here, you can see the yellow goes off the paper. But if you remember, a few of my circles, the color bled together. So obviously I couldn't leave that white space around each circle. But just leave a tiny, tiny little bit of white around each of your flowers. And then I arranged my flowers on my paper so that I could see how many flowers did I want to use. Did I want to use 9 of my dots, or how many dots did I use? Let's see how many I used. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 complete circles. Well, this one will count as complete even though it goes off the edge a little bit. And then 2 of my flowers go off the paper so that you can only see about half of them. And that's fine too. You can have your flowers going off the paper. Then you're going to need to make a decision about if your stem goes off the paper or not, or if you can only see half of your stem. I ended up wrapping 2 of my stems are tissue paper, and I ended up wrapping them around my frame a little bit. You could just cut yours. If you're using construction paper, that's a little bit easier to cut because it's thicker. So that's up to you. How you design your composition, that's an artistic choice that you're going to have to make. So you're going to get your circles cut out, and you're going to get your stems cut out. The other thing I did was some of my stems are lined up with the bottom of the paper, and then some of them are at varying heights. So you can decide how you want to arrange your stems. You might not want any stems. You might just want to have some flowers in your field, and that's fine too. However you want it to look is fine. I do kind of like the stems because it makes it a little bit less abstract and it makes it look a little bit more realistic, but either way is totally fine and will look good. So once I got my circles all cut out and I figured out about where they wanted them to go, my papers are all dry, so I'm going to glue my stems down. It's okay for you to leave some of the stems hanging off and then just cut them at the end, or however you want to do it. Before I forgot where to put my circles, my flower heads, I glued them down after I glued each stem down. And some of them may overlap and some of them may have their own space, and that's fine too. If you decide not to do stems, you do want your flower heads to fill your whole page. So space them out so that they fill up your whole composition. I filmed this up close so you could see me tucking in a half of a flower head, kind of glue behind one of the other flowers, and I cut it so that it would line up with my edge. You could always cut it after you get it glued down as well. Now that I've established my composition, it's time for me to put different designs in the middle of my flowers. This is going to be kind of like a sunflower design with some interesting details and an interesting pattern inside the middle of the flower. I wanted my petals to be kind of squarish, roundish. So you could say rounded off rectangles. And then I put some polka dots inside. Each of my flower heads is going to be different. Some of them can be more complicated or more complex than others. These are kind of like peony looking flowers. peonies have big heads, kind of like a rose, but the petals are bigger and they're usually wavier, like wavy on the edges. Here I am doing a daisy and it's a little bit off-centered, like it's being looked at, like you're looking at it from the side, or, you know, all the flower heads don't have to be like full frontal head on. They can be turned a little bit at different angles. This flower, it looks kind of like a zinnia, and so the petals are stacked on top of each other, almost like roof tiles would be. So I started in the center, and then I just kept building out and around with my petals. Different zinnias have different shaped petals, so I had made round petals for my other flowers, so I wanted this one to be a little bit more squared off, but I could have made them round too. And they get bigger as they go out towards the edge of the flower. This next flower is pretty much just a straightforward daisy. Tried to turn this little flower into a tulip. So I've got some bigger petals on the outside and then a little spiral of petals in the middle. Then for my last big yellow flower, I wanted it to look a little bit like a rose. So I started with a spiral, and then I just kept building my petals around that spiral. So they overlap each other a little bit, not completely, and you just keep building and overlapping as you go around. And the edges or the shapes are kind of wavy lines. They're not kind of wavy, they are wavy lines. And the shapes are very irregular. They're not all exactly the same. Supplies you're going to need for today are your 2 paintings from last class. You need scissors. I preferred using a glue stick for this project, but you could certainly use Elmer's liquid glue. And you need some kind of green paper for your stems. And that's all you need. Oh, and a Sharpie. You get everything glued down and you're almost finished. Your very last step is to sign your name along one of the stems. So I turned my paper and wrote my name kind of going up one of the stems. This is very important because your parents, if you have siblings, your parents are going to want to remember which one of their kids did this project. And you also need to put the year, so 2021, next to your name. This is also very important because it helps Square One Art identify which kid's artwork is which. And so that will help them as well as your family. I think these projects are so beautiful and so happy, and I cannot wait to see yours. So I can see them when your parents upload them to Square One Art, and so I'm going to be checking on them. So when you take the final work home today, you need to also take home the handout that tells your parents how to upload the picture and the picture of the artwork to Square One Art. If you decide you don't want to do that, I hope you at least display them somewhere in your home. And I'll leave you with some different flower designs to help get your creative juices flowing for what kind of flowers you want to put in your colorful circles. Boys and girls, I will see you next time.